Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're continuing our series on Unifier and the cost sheet. And today we're going to focus on the budget components of the cost control that you can do within Unifier. The previous session was how to set up the cost sheet. And we'll continue the series with the commitments or spending money and funding that you might get on your projects. Not everyone has funding component to manage, but if you do, we will run through how that works as well. So I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm actually joining today from Montreal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. And doing the presentation is Amy Paul, coming to you from Calgary. And she's going to run through how you use out-of-the-box. We're going to use out-of-the-box functionality to do your budget management in Unifier. Okay, so she's going to do a deep dive, and we'll go through exactly how to do it. So I'm going to hand it over to Amy. Coming your way.
All right, and I'll just share my screen here. All right, so what you're looking at right now is a cost sheet in Unifier with several assigned costs. So you can see along the y-axis here, we have all of our cost codes, and they're each attached to a cost, such as inventory expenses or drilling. And then along the top axis here, we have our columns, which further categorize our costs by things such as approved estimates, approved budget changes, etc. So today, I'm going to be focusing on the effect that budgets have on the cost sheet. So namely, the initial budget, any budget changes you might make, budget transfers, and forecasting. So let's move over to a different project with no cost assigned to it yet. So for demonstration purposes, you can see that this cost sheet only has columns related to budgets. So that'll make it just a little bit easier to see the changes as they happen. So as you can see, at the moment, there are no costs attached to this project in any of the budget areas. So they're all set to $0. Each of these columns is gathering data from the budget information in this project. So for example, if we look at the approved initial budget here, you can see that the data source is initial budget approved, which means that it's basically just gathering information from any business process initial budgets that have been approved. And then if we look at the revised budget here, you can see that this one is actually using a formula. And this formula consists of approved initial budget, approved budget changes, and approved budget transfers to gather its data. So to get started, we're going to need an initial budget. So if I move over in this left menu here to budget management and then to initial budget, you'll see that at the moment we don't actually have an initial budget in this project. So let's go ahead and create one. So as this is my original budget, I'm just going to call this one Original Budget 2025. And I'm going to move straight over into the line items where I'm going to be entering my costs. So I do have quite a few costs that I want to add to this budget. So I'm going to be importing a list of cost codes and their associated costs from a CSV sheet rather than entering them manually, just to make the process go like a little bit quicker. So we did cover importing in our last webinar, but I'm going to do a quick refresher just in case anyone missed it last time. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to download the CSV or Excel template in which you're putting your line items. So you can do this by going over to this More Actions button, clicking on Export Line Item Template, and then choosing either a CSV or a Microsoft Excel. I typically prefer to use CSV, but either will work. So I'm going to click on our CSV here. You'll see that it downloads. And once we open this guy up, you'll see that we now have the template for adding cost codes in bulk. So each of these sections is where you can add your information. So we have a cost code section, an item quantity section, unit of measure, item unit cost, short description, and more information. So you're just going to go through and you're going to enter your information for each line item using these columns. So just for the purposes of this presentation, we do have a sheet with all of this already entered. So I'm going to pull that one up now. So here you can see it's the same format of our CSV sheet, but this one already has all of our information entered. So we have our cost codes entered here, the item quantity for each, our unit of measure, our item unit cost, and more information entered. And we also have a line of Ds here just to help Unifier identify which line item is a line item. So once we have all of these guys set up, we're going to go right back into our Unifier initial budget. We're going to click Actions, Import, and Data from CSV file. So we're going to pull in that information that we were just looking at there. Click Upload. And you'll see that in just a few seconds, we now have all of our line items entered in here. So you can see we have a total of 37 line items that we have imported. And you can see that the total amount for all of our line items is at $193,450,635. So as you can see, each of these costs are attached to a cost code, which will help identify them in the cost sheet. So now that I have my expenses all listed here, we're going to go ahead and approve this initial budget. So I'm going to click Send, Approve Without Review, and we're going to send that guy off. All right, so it's been created successfully, and you'll see that the status is now in Approved. So let's refresh our page here and go take a look at what happened with our cost sheet. All right, so you can see that we now have values in our approved initial budget column. So there are values in each row attached to each cost code as we have entered them in the initial budget. You can see that each section rolls up to the section header above it. So for example, anything in the EOC Gen section is all added up and put in this kind of darker purple line here. And we also have the total of all of our EOC project costs in this green line up here, as well as listed down here in our total row. If I were to approve another initial budget, those values would be added to these ones here to show the combined amount of all of our initial budgets. So you might notice that these values are hyperlinked. So if you click on one, it'll actually show you where that value is coming from. And you're also able to add attachments and notes as needed to each of these costs.
Amy, you want to go back there for a sec and just click into
sure.
cell details, I believe. And audit log, I guess. Okay. All right. It's weird. It's not showing properly, I don't think. But it's all good. It should show there what document is filling it in.
Oh, that one's in transactions.
Oh, okay,
here.
there.
So we have our original budget.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right, so our project does have an initial budget now, but budgets seldomly stay the same as the initial one throughout a project. So there are usually setbacks or changes that happen along the way that's going to adjust your initial budget. So this is where budget changes come in. So if you look at our cost sheet, you'll see that our columns for pending budget changes and approved budget changes are all empty. And our revised budget change column contains the same values as our approved initial budget column, as there have been no changes yet. So let's say we want to do some cost cutting on this project. Budget changes can be used for negative values as well as positive. So we can use a budget change to take costs away from the initial budget. So let's go back into budget management, and this time we'll open up budget changes. So again, we have no budget changes here yet. So let's go ahead and create one. So for this one, I'm just going to name it Cost Cutting November 2025. I'm going to set our reason as scope changes, and we're going to move right on into line items again. So just like before, I'm going to import our cost codes from a CSV file. So I'll open that guy up there. Upload, and here they are. And so you'll see that these ones are all negative values. So these values here that are in brackets, these are all negatives, as well as the quantities are set as negative. So you can see that our total amount now is a negative $53 million. So we're cutting around $50 million from our initial budget. So I'm going to go in and send this guy, and this one I'm going to send for review. And just to make things simple for this webinar, I'm just going to send it to myself. Send that guy out. And now our budget change has been created. And you see that the status is set for awaiting review. So once again, we're going to refresh our page. And let's check on what has happened to our cost sheet. All right, so now you can see that we have our negative values in our pending budget changes column, with each specific cost mapped to the correct cost code. So as these are pending changes, we do not yet have any values in the approved budget changes or any difference showing in the revised budget, as again, the revised budget only uses our approved values. But what would happen if we were to approve a budget change rather than leaving it in the review stage? So let's take a look at that now. So we're going to go right back to our budget change, and this time we're going to create one for approval. So this one I'll just make nice and simple. This will be an additional depth to some of our wells here. And this one again, I will set as scope change. And once again, let's import our line items from our CSV file here. All right, so now we have 5 line items imported here, and you'll see that all of them are connected to one cost code. This is our EOC DRI 30, or our drilling cost code. So let's approve this one. We're just going to send it, and once again, we're going to approve it without review. And you'll see it's been created successfully with our total amount of $1,500,000. And we're going to refresh and check out our cost sheet again. So now you can see that we have our value of $1,500,000 in our approved budget changes, and they're all attached to our drilling cost code here. Because this one has been approved, you'll see that there is also a difference in the revised budget. So for example, beforehand, we had $7,500,000, and we approved an additional $1,500,000. So now we have a new revised budget total of $9 million. So let's try rejecting a budget change now. So for this one, we're going to go back into budget change, create a new one for rejection. And this one we'll just make nice and simple. We're going to set it for additional software needs. This reason will be errors and omissions. And as this one is just a nice and easy one line, we're just going to add this one manually. So I'm going to grab our cost codes. This one I'm going to set as inventory expenses, or EOC DRI 10. The item quantity I'm going to set to 2. Unit of measure will be each. And we're going to set the item unit cost as $8,048. And then because we do have an item quantity of 2, you'll see that the total amount is doubled from our item unit cost. And then I'm just going to leave our short description as inventory expenses. So I'll click Save. And now this one is ready to be sent with a total of $1,600,96. All right, so let's send this one for review. And once again, I'm going to send this to myself. It's been created. And now we're going to go straight back in and we're going to reject this guy. So I'll have to accept that I've sent it to myself. I'm going to send it once again, and this time I'm sending it for rejection. All right, so now you can see that our additional software needs has been rejected. So let's refresh our page. and see what has happened to our cost sheet. All right, so you can see by looking at our numbers here that nothing has actually changed from before due to our rejected budget change, which is as we've expected. Once a budget change is rejected, it won't show on the cost sheet so that the numbers are not affected by a change that is no longer relevant. Now, as an important side note, you can change this. So like I said, these columns are configurable. So if you did want to show rejected business processes, you can create a column or a formula to show those. All right, so next up, we're going to look at budget transfers. So let's say we need to transfer part of the budget between cost codes. So I'm going to go back to our budget management section, open up budget transfers, and we're going to create a new one here. So this one, I'm going to name transfer from 5 wells into the facility expansion. So in this case, we are putting more of our budget into facility expansion, and we're taking it from our original 5 wells. So this one, I will again select a scope change. So when I go into the line items here, I'm going to be importing my cost codes from our handy list of pre-made ones here. All right, so now with this one, budget transfers are a little bit different. So you can see that an equal amount has been taken and then redistributed between our cost codes here. We have our total amount here set to 0, indicating that all costs have been properly redistributed between the relevant cost codes. So if I go back to our budget transfer here, it will tell you the total transferred amount, which is $8 million. So let's approve this and see what happens to our cost sheet. All right, we've created it. We're going to refresh our page and take a look. All right, so now you can see for our approved budget transfers, we now have $8 million being taken away from our pad section. We have $5 million going into site development and $3 million going into facilities. In this section here, under the pad section, you can see that a chunk of our costs have been transferred elsewhere. So this actually leaves the revised budget lower than our initial budget, as these costs have now been taken and put in another cost code. Further down, if we look at our procurement site development, you can see that in our revised budget, it is now set to over $8 million, as we have approved a budget transfer of $5 million into this cost codes. So it is adding $5 million to the additional $3 million here. So now we have a total revised budget of $8 million. You might also notice that as I've been adding these budget changes and budget transfers and our initial budget, this percent of budget column here has been adjusting, telling us the percentage of the budget that each of these cost codes are taking up. So if I look at this guy here, you can see that it is comparing the revised budgets to the total revised budget, which is how it is getting these percentages here. All right, so last, we're going to look at budget forecasting. So if you look at our forecast column right now, you can see that it is reflecting the exact amount of our approved initial budget. That's because of the formula that this guy is using. So the formula is taking the values of the revised budget, as well as any active forecasts and some additional values, including the forecast adjustment, manual, open risks, active risks, and open issues. So for the purposes of this mini webinar, we're just focusing on the first two, and we're going to be leaving the others empty. So right now we don't have any active forecasts, which is why it is showing the exact same amount as our revised budget column here. So let's change that and go into our forecast section. So here you can see that we have a past forecast for October. So this one is set for status informal rather than active, which is why it wasn't showing in our cost sheet. So if we open this guy up, We can see that this one was created to tell us that we believe the project will be running 1 month late, so we needed more funds added to our home office. So if we look at our line items here, you can see that our home office expenses here all have additional costs added to them. So this is for October. So let's create one for November. So let's say that the project has been pushed back an additional month for a total of 2 months late. So I'm going to set this forecast here to discarded as it is no longer relevant. And I'm going to create our new one for November. All right, so this one is going to be our November forecast. I'm going to set it as just a regular forecast type with the category general. And I'm going to set the status to active. So for our line items, I'm going to import the same line items and costs as were in our October forecast. So I'll open that guy up here. All right, so now you can see we have the same amounts in our home office as were in our October forecast. But that one was only pushed back 1 month, and now this one has been pushed back 2 months. So we're going to be doubling the amount of these cost codes. So I'm going to be going in, changing this to 444. This one here, I'm going to be changing to $1,180. This one will be $2,580. We'll set this one to $5,782. And then finally, this one we'll be setting to $21,828. So like I said, just doubling all of these costs to account for the extra month.
Could you do that in Excel and load it back in? Since
you sure
my
could,
math
yep.
is terrible. Okay.
Would you like me to demonstrate that as well?
No, it's okay.
Okay, but you sure could. Yeah, you could do it in Excel and then just import it into here if you wished. So I'm also going to set a note just telling us why we've made these changes. So for my note, I'm just going to say, due to the project being 2 months behind schedule, we are going to need to add to the home office costs. And I'm just going to set that for all of these here. All right, so now we have our forecast set. We're going to save the changes that we've made. We're going to submit it. And then once again, we're going to refresh and go check out our cost sheet. All right, so now for our forecast, you can see that we've had some changes made. So for example, for our home office expenses here, we originally had $3,500,000. And now we have $3,500,444 in our forecast. So it is reflecting our active forecast. And you can see that these changes have been made for all of our home office costs here. So this column is just a really nice way to give project management the ability to document the forecast every single month and keep up with the latest information so that they can plan for the future and adjust accordingly. So again, these are the columns that we have chosen to use in our cost sheet. They are mainly out of the box, but like everything in Unifier, this is all highly configurable. So for example, like I said, if you did want to see your canceled business processes, or you wanted to see, for example, pending initial budgets in addition to your approved ones, you are able to adjust these all according to your needs. These are just a couple of the examples that we thought would be helpful to show you today. So that's all from me today. And if there aren't any questions, I'm going to hand the presentation back to Nicole to finish out the webinar.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
Sure.
As the titles of these webinars were implying, they're just mini webinars, overviews of specific functions inside the tool, out of the box. We're trying just to show you out of the box functionality. You can add a lot of other different functions. So one of the questions that was in the chat was, how do I take a contract that's multiple year, multiple projects? How do I get it in here? And then how do I split it up. So you can do that. You can definitely do that. We have examples of that. You create the master contract and then you push the values down into the projects, if you will, okay, the lowest level, and you marry them together. This is not out of the box functionality. You have to do a few special things to make that happen, okay, but it's possible. And that's the thing that's nice about the way Unifier works. It's very configurable. You can get integrations to other tools by plugging in little programs in the workflow. Okay, so there's lots and lots of good things that you can do with the software. So in these series, we're just trying to show you out of the box functions, just so you can get a feel for what you might get if you want it to take on this tool within your organization. Alrighty, let's wrap it up. So thanks for joining us today. Hopefully you saw something interesting. The tool is very easy to work with, and in the last few years, they've made the functions better for uploading, making that much easier to work with as well. So we've got other webinars coming up. I've got a CAPS one actually today. It's going to be later today. That's for updating in P6. So we've got a few coming up related to P6, and we've got ongoing series on cost control in Unifier. So just take a look at our webinar series. And the next one will be on the commitments, so spending money, basically. And then we'll have one on funding. And we can do others if people are interested in other features, but that's what we've got on the schedule right now. So thanks for joining us. If you want to reach out, here's some contact info. And I think we'll stop the recording there.